Hello and welcome. This is Cheryl. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today I'm card making with the Cozy Toes add-on die set. This is a companion set to this October 2024 large die of the month. This one had some fun slippers with it. They were all pretty winter and Christmas themed. So the Cozy Toes add-on set is a companion set to this, so you can create cards with this throughout the year. So these are some of the ones that I made back then when I was doing my club's video for that month. I'll link to that video at the end of this if you want to see how some of those other cards were made. Here is the Cozy Toes add-on die set. So there's a shark you could make, a unicorn, a cow, a frog, and then there is the Cozy Toes Friends stamp set. So I'm going to prep my stamp set. I'm not going to use it quite yet, but the first thing I like to do anytime I have a new clear stamp set is use a white eraser on the stamping surface. It just removes any possible manufacturing residue and helps it take ink just a little bit better. So I'm going to set that to the side and start creating my first card. So I'm using several different metallic papers with this, as well as printed papers. So for the shark, I'm using some matte silver cardstock for the body, and then I'm using some brushed antique white cardstock for the belly, as well as the mirror antique white cardstock for the teeth. I thought I liked the combination of those different finishes from those metallic cardstocks. I'm also using a bunch of printed papers. These are from the Just Sayin 6-inch pad. I've used these in previous videos. They're just some fun prints, and I thought they worked perfectly for pajama bottoms, basically. But I also am using them for the card backgrounds, for a nice pattern for the background. I tried to choose patterns that complemented each other and still let the Cozy Toes slippers shine over the background. So I'm assembling everything with some Barely Art glue in a fine line bottle. This is going to work perfectly for assembling it, as well as assembling my card at the end. Now, when it comes to assembling those pieces that are die cut from some of those specialty metallic cardstocks, you do need to let them dry just a little while longer. They have a coating on them, so the glue doesn't really seep into them, so it does take just a little bit longer for that glue to set on there and to dry, but it's definitely worth it to have those different finishes on in this case, the shark. It just takes them to the next level, in my opinion. So typically when I have a bunch of pieces that I want to assemble, I lay them out so that I have everything in place. It just makes the assembly a lot quicker and easier. And you can see how I'm going back and forth between the slippers and pajama bottoms and then the my sharks. That way I can let some glue start to set before working on other pieces. It just makes it a little bit easier. We're going to get to the same point at the end, but it's always nicer to make it just a little easier on ourselves. I have a large acrylic block here that I use often, and I put it on top of my die cuts as they're drying, especially when it comes to those ones with those metallic cardstocks. It just keeps everything nice and flat, makes sure that everything has good contact, and because it's a clear block, I can see right through it. So if something shifts as I put that block down, I can see that and I can adjust it. But it frees up my hands for working with other things and to continue working while I let things dry. I never like to stand and hold something while it's drying. So after I have all of these pieces together, I will put these sharks on top of my little slippers here, and then we're ready to assemble our card. So these are very, very simple cards to create. It took longer to do all the die cutting than it did to assemble these. Now for my slippers, I die cut them all at a white because the focal point was going to be the little animal pieces on the front of them. But if you wanted, you could easily die cut them in different colors to complement whatever design you're creating. I did change the color of the soles of each one of those slippers to coordinate with the rest of the colors that I was using in the card. So I did add that little bit of color, and that's different for each one of those cards. But I figured the white slippers behind there, they're kind of a background piece, so I didn't really need to do those in any particular color. While my die cuts are drying, I'm going to stamp one of the sentiments on the inside of the card. Now, all of these are stamped on the inside of the card. You could easily, if you wanted, stamp them on a strip of cardstock and trim it and add it to the front of the card. But I thought it worked well on the inside as well. So I'm using my Misty stamping tool. This one here is stamped with some prize ribbon distress ink. And I am stamping it a couple times just to make sure I have a nice, crisp, clean sentiment to it. I love the fact that there are sentiments that work perfectly with this set, and you can also just use them with the October 2024 set as well. Although the sentiments are good for ones throughout the year, not just necessarily Christmas ones. So I'm not using a mat around my printed paper. I have some white card bases here, and I'm just using that printed paper as my background. Again, I'm trying to keep the focal point on the slippers, the pajama bottoms, as well as just my main die cuts there. So for this one, I'm just going to cross those legs, just a different variation of a way to use it. Another thing that you can vary is I have the narrow parts of the pajama bottoms towards the bottom of the slippers. You can change those if you want them to have flared bottoms. You can easily do that. I also glue my whole piece down first, let it set for a few moments, and then take my shears to trim off the excess. That way I know it's trimmed perfectly to the edge of the card. I trimmed it to the edge of the card, but if you wanted, you could glue these onto that printed paper and then trim them and then add them to the background of the card. This is what I chose to do at this moment. Now, one of the things I always love doing when it comes to die cuts is adding things to give it extra texture. So here I'm using some glossy accents on the eyes of the shark. I thought it would be fun if they had glossy, beady eyes. So I put that there. I used a pin to pin any bubbles. You don't want to let any bubbles dry. Sorry, I meant pop, not pin any bubbles. You don't want the bubbles to dry in that glossy accents. And then I used my die pick in order to clean up some that had gone just outside the lines. So here is the finished card. I'm going to tuck that to the side while that glossy accents dries and continue on with my next one. So once again, we have some printed papers for the background as well as for the pajama bottoms. Here I'm using some velvet cardstock for some extra texture. I always love using this with animals or things that could be fuzzy. So I thought it was perfect for this, and this bright blue color works perfectly with the printed papers that I was using. So again, I'm going to start with the slippers, the legs or the pieces of legs that go in there. The great thing about die cutting or layering dies is when you do the die cutting, it puts a little impression showing you where the pieces on top are intended to go. So there's very little guesswork trying to figure out which piece goes where. It's very easy, and in my opinion, it's pretty intuitive to know what goes where. And I find those impress lines when you die cut really helpful. For the eyes for our little monster slippers, these pieces go behind this little strip piece here. And again, there's a little impression or little shape imprinted into it to know exactly which piece goes where. So I'm assembling the eye pieces first, and then I'm going to put them behind my little monsters. Now, the velvet cardstock that I'm using is an adhesive velvet, but I like to put it onto scraps of cardstock before die cutting it. It just makes it easier for assembly. It also thickens it up a little bit and gives it some more substance. So I'm just going to be gluing it to the back of my velvet monsters here, but it is cardstock, so it is going to dry fairly quickly. The great thing about that liquid glue is it gives you that little bit of wiggle room to move and shimmy things in place. It does start to set pretty quick. Like I said before, any of those metallic pieces to take just a little bit longer, so you have to be a little bit more patient with those, but those metallic pieces also take things to the next level, so they're so worth it. So while my eyes glue on the back of my monsters, I'm going to finish off gluing the little legs with the pajama bottoms. So I put the back of the slippers on, those go behind those little leg pieces. You can see how everything assembles together really quick and easily, especially after laying everything out and having everything that is supposed to go together close together. So I just flipped over that pajama bottom there just so that you could see what it would look like if you did the flared end at the bottom. I prefer the tapered end at the bottom, but it's just personal preference. So for these monsters, I am once again using that mirror white treasured cardstock for the teeth. I just like the white shiny look. I thought it suited them. And then I have some of that matte silver treasured cardstock for the little horns. Another option here I think would be fun would be to use some of the glitter cardstock from some of those treasured cardstock packs. I opted to stay with this because I wanted the focus on this guy to be more the velvet cardstock for him. I didn't want something to take away from that. But I love that there's different options that you can pick and choose. So I set those guys aside to dry, and then I'm going to do my sentiment on the inside of the card. So once again, I'm using Prize Ribbon Distress ink for this one, using my Misty stamping tool so that I can stamp it a couple of times to make sure that I have a nice, crisp, clean stamping. Sometimes I get it right on the first time, but sometimes just that second stamping helps in areas where the ink was just a little bit lighter. So I do always like the handiness of using a Misty tool for doing that stamping. It just gives you a little bit of peace of mind knowing that you don't have to get it right that very first time. So once I have that sentiment in there, I use my Teflon bone folder just to reinforce my score line on the side of the card. I can glue down my printed paper here. So this printed paper has some blue in it, which ties into our little monster slippers. You can see that there's no blue on the pajama bottoms. It's just kind of a pink and a green plaid. But the blue ties in with the background, and of course those bright green eyes tie in with the greens on both of them. So this time I'm just going to glue the legs down straight. I'm going to do them straight for the next one as well. But like I said, you can always get a little bit creative when it comes to them. This is just such a fun one. And if you wanted to put the sentiment on the front of the card, there's a lot of space over that top. I don't think you'd be covering anything vital if you covered those pajama bottoms, but I opted to do it on the inside just to keep the front a little bit cleaner. So after my pajama bottoms have dried a moment on the front of the card, I use my shears to trim them off. Then I'm going to use the glossy accents for the pupils on the eyes. Now be careful with the glossy accents with velvet paper. In my Halloween series or Craftoween series, I used it on a spider, and when you get too close to the velvet paper, it likes to absorb that glossy accents. So after learning that from that, I do like to make sure to keep it away from the velvet cardstock. So it's only on the pupils of the eyes. So with the glossy accents, they're done. I'm also going to set this one aside, but I absolutely love the difference between that velvet cardstock and the glossy accents in the eyes and those metallic cardstocks. For the last card here, I'm going to do the unicorn. I absolutely love this one. I thought it was just absolutely adorable. That's why I saved it for last, because it's my favorite one. So again, I have everything die cut and ready to go. I'll have all the cardstocks that I'm using in my supply list. There's a bunch of different colors for each of the different ones. Again, I'm using some printed papers for the pajama bottoms as well as my background. And I tried to coordinate the backgrounds and pajama bottom pieces or printed papers with what I was going to be using for the slippers. So for this one, you can see it has a lot more pieces than some of the other ones. So there's some little pieces that go behind the nose holes on the little snout. So I'm going to glue those in place. I am going to do a tiny little bit of ink blending on the hair pieces. So I'm not going to glue those right to the unicorns till after I have assembled them and done a little bit of ink blending on them. So for the faces for the unicorns, I used that brushed white treasure cardstock. It's got a really cool texture to it, and it has some shimmer to it. So I thought it worked well for the unicorns, and I'm using the pearl finish of the white treasure cardstock for the unicorn horn. The rest of the cardstocks are just plain cardstock, but I will make them a little bit more special when it comes to the ink blending, and you'll see that in just a moment. So the pieces are really easy to layer on top of each other. And again, just like some of the other ones when I was talking about it, when you do the die cutting, it just leaves an impression showing you where the other pieces go. So it's kind of like putting a puzzle together that you know where all the pieces go together. So the nice thing about that liquid glue is it helps you to move and shimmy things in place so you can get that perfect placement, but it's really easy to know which pieces go where. So that liquid glue really helps with that. So if you're really observant, you may notice that I'm actually missing some pieces. I didn't even die cut them. Didn't even realize I was missing them till my cards were completely assembled and I was editing photos, and then I realized that there were a couple pieces that I had missed on there. So we'll get to that in a moment. I will get there. If you have realized what it is that I've forgotten, I will get there. Really, I think it's actually kind of funny that I did this and I didn't even realize it until everything was totally assembled. I guess my brain must have been focused somewhere else. So after assembling the head as well as the hair of the unicorn, we're going to add the pajama bottoms as well as the back of the slippers to the bottom of the legs. Set those aside. Then we'll add the little unicorn snouts to the face and then set those guys aside as well. So for my ink blending, I'm only going to be doing the hair from the mane. I'm going to be using the Natural Pearl pad from Lisa Horton Crafts. This is such a fun pad, and I think I've said it in a previous video, I'm having a hard time not using it for everything. On light colors, it just gives it a little bit of a shimmer, but on darker colors, it gives it more of a shimmer with a white to it. You can actually see the whiteness on the sticky mat that I have my pieces stuck to. I'm not doing the entire piece of it. I'm just doing the outside parts of those pieces just to give them that extra little bit of shimmer. I'm also going to be using some stickles on them because, in my opinion, unicorns should be rainbowy, glittery, shimmery, all the things. So I'm adding that shimmer to the background of it, and then I will add a little bit of stickles to it. So I add the mane to the sides as well as the little hair pieces to the tops, then add my unicorn horns. Those ones are done with that pearl cardstock, so it does take a few moments for that to dry. I want to wait for just a few moments and let that set before adding that to the slippers. I'm going to tuck those aside and stamp my sentiment for this one. I'm going to stamp this one with some picked raspberry distress ink to match the colors on the front of the card. Once again, using the Misty stamping tool so that I can stamp it multiple times. The nice thing about the Misty as well, with that grid on the front, if I don't happen to put that stamp set really straight, I can take a look at it right along that grid and I can straighten it if I need to. So it's nice to be able to do that and see fairly easily if I've gotten it straight just by winging it, or if I need to adjust it. So with my sentiment on the inside, I can add that printed paper to the front of the card. Then I can add my little legs, and then I can add my little unicorn heads. Have you figured out yet what I forgot? I still haven't figured it out at this point. Again, I didn't figure it out until I was editing photos, and then I realized what I had done, and then you just can't unsee it. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. So I've got those legs glued down. Now we're going to add the unicorn heads, putting the glue on them as well. And I chose to keep the head for this white, but you could easily choose a color with it. I mean, take inspirations from My Little Pony. You can come up with all sorts of different colors, and I think they're going to look fabulous. This would be perfect for a little girl's party as well. So with that done, I'm going to put some stickles on the hair. I'm not putting it on the whole thing, just some of the outer edges, just to add a little bit of sparkle. I always think with stickles, less is more. So just a hint gives it, it takes it to the next level, but too much to me is just, it doesn't take it to the next level in my opinion. So after putting the stickles as well as glossy accents for the eyes and the little nose holes, I take my shears and I trim those pieces off the top, making sure to be very careful. This is what I forgot. I forgot to give my unicorn head ears, and there is dies in that set, so it was just me. I totally forgot. Didn't even die cut them. I totally forgot while I was doing my die cutting. So we're going to do a little bit of card surgery here. I didn't want to rip everything apart. So what I'm going to be doing is assembling these ears and then let that glue set for just a moment. Because that white cardstock is that brushed white treasured cardstock, I'm going to use my detail scissors just to cut those ears off with just a little bit of extra room. Add glue to the back of it, and then just tuck them underneath the head where they're supposed to go. And had I not mentioned it and just kind of put them in there, the recipient would never know, but they definitely look a lot better with those ears than they do without the ears. Again, it's something that once you saw it, or once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. It was just wrong. So with the ears, it definitely completes it a lot better, and they definitely look a whole lot better than they did. So here is that finished card with the stickles, giving it just a little bit extra shimmer. The Natural Pearl ink blending on the hair, also giving it some sparkle and shimmer as well. And then with those metallic cardstocks, with that brush cardstock in the back, it just takes it, it's just pretty. So then we have our monster with the velvet cardstock, as well as our silver metallic horns and glossy white teeth with the glossy accents on the pupils. And then our very first one with these sharks. And they just look like happy sharks to me. I think they're absolutely adorable. But then we have those beady eyes with the glossy accents. That doesn't show off as well on camera as it does in real life. It really takes it to that next level and just finishes them off perfectly. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate all the time that you spend with me. I hope you have a fantastic day.